Hi friends, welcome to the Bible Project Podcast, and we're continuing together to work through the book of Genesis, and we're into this story of Abraham and God's call, God really giving him the ultimate test of telling him to sacrifice his son, his only son Isaac. So let's pick up the story straight away in verse 3, which tells us this. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey, and he took with himself 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. Now the point being made here is simply that Abraham obeyed. As a matter of fact, he obeyed immediately. There's no delay here, no procrastination. The very next morning he gets up and leaves, and he also takes wood for the burnt offering. Verse 4 then tells us, on the 3rd day Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Now we were in Beersheba initially, and he's travelled north for 3 days, and he actually gets to the region which today is called Jerusalem. Now one commentator I read pointed out that this was a distance of more than 30 miles if he went over the hills, or 45 miles, which was the shortest way round, which is probably why the journey is said to have taken 3 days. But the point is that he left the very next morning. He didn't plan and prepare for a week. He did what God asked him, and he pretty much did it immediately. That's important, because not only did he obeyed immediately. But he not only obeyed out of compulsion. Underneath there was obedience, a desire to be obedient and faithful to God's command. The narrative continues in verse 5, and it says, Abraham said to the servants, "Stay here with the donkey a while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." So what does that tell you? Well, there are 3 verbs used in this passage: go, worship, and return. And Bible experts refer to these as intensive verbs. Maybe he was determined to go, meaning he was determined to go. He was also determined to worship, but also he was determined that they would come back again. Now many commentators talk about the faith of Abraham, believing God could in fact bring Isaac back from the dead, if that is what was required. So there's a real intensity of faith being shown by Abraham here. Now the New Testament helps because it confirms for us exactly that is exactly what is going on here. In Hebrews chapter 11 it tells us this: by faith Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. He also had embraced the promise and was about to sacrifice his only son, even though God had said to him, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead, so in the manner of speaking, he did receive Isaac back from the dead. That's Hebrews 11:17-19. So the book of Hebrews explains for us what's really going on here in Genesis chapter 2, and pointing out that this whole story and these whole events are all about demonstrating faith, giving Abraham the opportunity to demonstrate his faith. But what's also going on in Genesis chapter 2 is faith, but we can see that faith is combined with works, and that's where the testing part lies. So let's just keep reading. Back in Genesis chapter 2, it tells us, Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, "Abraham." His father, "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place that God had told them about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. he bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Wow. Abraham not only had faith, but he had absolute unwavering faith, didn't he? He was going to do exactly what God had said he should do, believing that God was not going to take Isaac away, believing that God was going to bring back both of them, bring them both back down from the mountain, because he also believed that the fulfillment of his family line would come through Isaac. By the way, that demonstrates also to me that Isaac had a certain amount of faith here, because surely as a young man he could have run away. So both of them are seen to have faith here. So as many Bible experts suggest, and I believe that Abraham believed that if he did have to kill his son, God could indeed have come and resurrected him again. So far we've seen two things. God has given Abraham a command to go sacrifice your son, and we've seen from the reaction of Abraham right up to that point that he's willing to do that if necessary. But the next thing that's going to happen in this passage is God is going to step in now. He's going to respond to the demonstration of faith that Abraham has shown and the obedience that he's shown. But we'll look at that together in the next episode. Thank you for joining me today. That's it. If you'd like to see a transcript of this or any of the podcasts that I've done, there's always one available in the episode notes section of any audio version of the podcast that you might be listening to. If you happen to be watching on a video version on one of the platforms that the video appears, then there should be a link there through to the audio version where you can access the transcript. But hey ho, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you back right here tomorrow on the Bible Project Daily Podcast. Bye-bye for now.